Hey guys, thanks for being here tonight. If you're not from here, my name's Dave. I happen to be the pastor here, but really Dave's all you really need to know. The rest of it, all that title does is get you in trouble. All right, so we're thrilled that you're here for Community Recovery Night. It's going to be a really special night. Just as a way of introduction, our program is a hybrid. Well, we made it up of Celebrate Recovery, the best of NAAA, another recovery program called Living Free, and we kind of took them all and squeezed them together and created our own that we call Community Recovery. Part of our mission as our church as a whole is to be a community of changed lives, and so Community Recovery kind of fit perfect with that whole mentality. We run a 16-week program, and what we do is we use the 12 steps. We use the same 12 steps that everybody uses. We reworded them a little bit and made them in short phrases or words, hopefully so people can really easily remember. Like for step 1, we just want to focus on it's powerless. We get to step 3 and it's just surrender. And that way we're hoping keeping it simple, and that way people can remember, use, and all that kind of stuff. And so just as a point of reference, if you're in the area and want to come back, our 12 weeks or 12 steps we do in a 16-week cycle. And the way our cycle goes is we do, when the new cycle starts, we do step 1, step 2, step 3, the first 3 weeks. Then week 4, we do a testimony. Then we do step 4, 5, 6, a testimony, 7, 8, 9, a testimony, 10, 11, 12, and then usually after step 12, a big celebration, maybe with music and a whole bunch of people sharing. But tonight is actually that week for us, and this was a week that worked for Ashley to be able to do her story, and so this is our celebration at the end of the cycle. So next week, is like there's this other like worldwide event next Monday that kind of is filling up everybody's schedule, and so we still meet all the time. So there will be a group of people here even next Wednesday night. But we won't start the new cycle until the first Wednesday night of January. Next Wednesday night, we'll just hang out, have food, games, and just hang out because we found out the hard way during COVID. Some of you probably experienced this too. When COVID and those weeks that, we weren't supposed to meet, that we pretty quickly got out of that and just got on the down low because we started finding out that people were crashing during those 4 or 5 weeks that we didn't meet at all. And so we have made a commitment from now on. We will always have some of our leadership team here, even if it's on Christmas Day or New Year's Day or whatever. So with that said, next Wednesday night, it will just be kind of a come hang out for anybody that needs just to be around people. And then we'll start a new cycle on the first Wednesday of January. Christmas-wise also, we've got 5 services coming up in the next few days. Thursday night and Sunday morning, and the 2 Sunday morning ones, 9:30 and 11, they're all our regular worship service that we do every week. This week it is a Christmas service, but those are our regular ones. And then Sunday night at 6 and again at 11 p.m., we're doing a more traditional Christmas Eve service, carols, candlelight, all that kind of stuff. So Sunday morning, Sunday night are different. Thursday and Sunday are the same. So that's all that stuff. One of the things that we do, and I guess every recovery program I've ever been a part of, any kind, does some kind of milestone markers for, especially for the early days of recovery through the first year. And so we do that. And then when somebody gets close to a year in our program, they let me or Dennis, who's out manning the door right now, one of us know, and we print our own chips. We've got our own logo on our chips, and the 1-year chip actually has like your name engraved on it, so that it's more than just. And then 2 years, 3 years, all that. So one of the things that we do a lot, and I'm going to do it tonight just because I don't know where everybody is in their journey out of the madness or whatever it might be, but we like to show people that it can be done. So I'm going to ask you this. If you're here tonight and you've got a year or more, raise your hand. All right. Anybody that's new in the journey, look around. Because that's always one of the hardest things to be able to see or to get past the feeling of, yeah, I'll never make it. I'll never make it. We're blessed that we got a lot of people that got a lot of years under their belt of sobriety. And this is if you're in the area and looking for a church, I can honestly tell you without a shadow of a doubt, this is a safe place. It's a safe place. And might as well be, because if you want to call the pastor, starting at the top, the pastor's got 43 and a half years. So I'm just telling you. All that, hey, but no, really, you know what that means? That means the pastor's an old dude who started drinking far too young in life. But praise God, got out of it in a relatively short period of time. But this is a safe place. In our program, we want to help people that are battling, obviously, substance addictions of alcohol and narcotics. But also people that what we talk about is anything that has gotten your bubble off center. You know what I mean? Anything that has moved your bubble a little bit to the right or the left, whether it's a substance addiction or it's grief, depression, anxiety over something maybe that happened to you during your childhood years, whatever it is, because I'm convinced after all the years of doing this, after all the years of the 12 steps, every person on the planet should go through the 12 steps at least once. I'm also convinced of this. Any person on the planet that you know that, like, you sit back and look at them and go, man, I wish I had it together like they do. They have gone through the 12 steps, even if they don't realize they've gone through the 12 steps. Because they've worked through the whole idea of realizing that they're powerless to control their life and their actions on their own. That there is one who can restore the sanity in their life, and they've surrendered and they've made amends. They've done those things even if it wasn't in a program, because the basics of the 12 steps are just things you need to do to be able to get through life halfway sane. All right? So what our program is all about is anything that's taking your bubble off center, right or left, whatever. We're here. We get people that come to our group that all those things I listed, other addictions to things like porn and sexual addictions to gambling, you name something. Some of us that are addicted to pizza, and some are more addicted to it than others. No names. We don't mention names. His initials are Caleb. But anyway, no names. So anyway, we're glad you guys are here. But we do want to do the chips, and I wanted you to see how many people have a year or more, just as a way of showing everybody it is possible. You can get to a good place in life. The person you're looking for is on the front row. See, I know things. Yeah, surprise. So here's the deal. We start off with what we call a starting point chip, and it's a blue chip, and it's just for anybody who is starting a new journey. Some of our folks are doing 2 journeys at once. I'll be honest, I discourage that because it's hard enough to do one, and especially if one's a biggie. But if you would be interested in starting a new journey to getting your bubble back to center tonight, we got a blue chip for you. You may want one. All right. Come on. Does anybody have 30 days in on whatever journey you're working on? During this last week, you've passed the 30-day mark. All right. Anybody 60 days? All right, come on. 60? All right. 90 days. Anybody got 90 days? Okay. All right, come on. Everybody check your chips and make sure I got you the right chip. That doesn't always work out. Keep working, all right? Anybody got 4 months? Anybody passed the 4-month mark? 5 months. 6 months. 7 months. Well, I should check to make sure it had a hole in it. All right, 8 months. 8 months. 9. 10. All right. 11 months. Anybody hit a year this week? Yours is being printed with your name on it. Do you like the way I just played that off? Anybody got a year? I don't know. Anybody? Anybody? All right. So, and if you're,
hey, my wife celebrated 15 years of sobriety on the 18th of this month.
On what day of the month?
The 18th.
Okay, that's just 2 days ago. I was going to say, so like you taught last week but didn't share that with us? Okay.
No fronts, Dave. No fronts.
Okay. All right. Good. So here's the deal. Anybody that if you're at or getting close to a year, 2 years, whatever, let us know because we'll get that specialized chip with your name on it. All right. And so we're glad you guys are here. This is fun. I love getting to do the chips tonight because some of you ladies that I just met, way to go, keep working. Yep. Some of you guys that are around here that we've been through this journey together and seeing you guys get in stacking months and months is like, way to go. Keep working. And the beauty of having a great testimony is just another reminder for everyone that it can be done. Any of us in here that have done it for a long period of time went through that period of time where we were thinking, it can't be done. I can't ever get my stuff together. All right. I've known Kyle since middle school, middle school, high school, and through Kyle, I now know Ashley, and have grown to love both of them so much. Have marveled at their journey together, and Ashley at her journey just here in the last few months that we've been partners since about March or whatever, and so it was so cool. You guys, I don't know if are you going to talk about Sunday other than the 1 year? Are you going to talk about the other anniversary? Sure. Okay, so Sunday we talked about it at church and celebrated. Because Sunday was the actual 1 year sobriety. It was also their 6th wedding anniversary. And so we got to do through church, and then I got to just go to their house, and the 3 of us and the 2 little ones, just kind of, because they got another little one that's over terrorizing the other area. Okay. And we got to just hang out and kind of renew their vows and their commitment to each other and to doing it God's way, fully God's way. And Ashley, I know, wants to not only share her story, but she is ready. And this was a big milestone for this girl because not only is it just a year, but she in her mind's like, I want to get a year under my belt and then really in a bigger way start giving back. And start helping other people in a huge way. So we've been working to get to December, and so guys, welcome Ashley Samples and encourage her as she shares her story. All right, you go, girl.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm so nervous. I would just like to start us out all praying together. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for everybody that's here tonight. Thank you so much for the journey that I've had with you and with a lot of these people in this room. I pray to just be able to share experience and strength and hope, and let anybody that has hurts or needs any type of healing to just be called closer to you, Father, and just sing praise as to what you can do in my life, and I know in so many others. Just give me strength tonight, Father, and in your precious name I pray. Amen. Amen. I'm already emotional. So, I guess for me, my journey really starts in my early childhood. I don't really remember a whole lot, actually, as a child, because for me, at the age of 3, I started to get molested by somebody that was supposed to love me and protect me. And I think that then is where my darkness really started to cover my life, because of the fact it gave me such distorted views of what love was and what my value was and what I actually meant. And so I unfortunately really don't have a whole lot of happy memories that I can really remember. And when I started to come of age where I really realized how wrong it was, what was happening, I was at the age of 7 years old, and it mortified me. And that's when I really started to feel depression for the first time. I remember going to my room and actually taking a belt and trying to relieve myself of this world at 7 years old because of how mortified I was and how unsafe I felt. And it actually was my mother who knocked on my bedroom door that I was like, oh no. At the time I felt like I had to put on this persona. I was mortified to tell anybody about anything because of what I was being told. And so I remember struggling to try to free myself and open up the door to say, I'm okay, I'm fine, because back then you're not allowed to lock your doors, your bedroom doors. And so that's the first time that I really remember how depression really started to wreak havoc on my life. And, my parents had divorced when I was a year old, and so I'd only get to see my father every other weekend. And my mom, doing the best that she could for us, had remarried prior to my wonderful stepfather we have now. And I think that for me, I just wanted so deeply to latch on to a supportive, loving father figure and feel loved, that it was too far gone for me by the time I had gotten old enough to really realize what real love meant. And at the age of 9, I again tried to take my life with a bottle of Tylenol, and started doing things that would try to call out for help because I couldn't find the words, really. I would put scratches on my wrists and write really dark poetry and write really dark essays for school that would win Young Author Awards. And I'm like, how is it none of you question why I'm writing or doing any of these things? And so it just, my sick mind validated even more that nobody cares, And I'll never forget my first time ever trying pot. I was in middle school, and I had gone over to a girlfriend's house, and for her it ended up being a horrible experience. She was vomiting and really sick, and we ended up getting caught, and it was horrible. But for me, I was like, oh wow, I didn't get sick. It was more terrifying for me that somebody else did. And but I knew that it wasn't right, and I got home and had started to read the Bible. And from where, my stepdad, he was a he was in a Christian band, and that's when I felt like really introduced to the idea of a loving God, because for so long for me I'd felt the pressure of a wrathful, damning, condemning God that it scared me. And so I was newly in this new kind of found faith with the introduction of my stepdad. And so I'd gone to my Bible and found some scripture and had talked with my mom and stepdad about it, because I was more terrified of the effects that it could cause on your life and on another person, because I'd also grown up seeing my brother, since I could truly remember, in and out of police cars, in and out of trouble from drugs and behavior issues, and I knew for me, I never wanted to end up like that. I never ever wanted to end up like that. I was going to be the one in our family that had it all together. I was going to be great, and I was going to be able to come out okay. And I know for me that the idea of control started at a very young age, because for me, I wanted to excel in school because then I could control my parents' love for me. I wanted to excel in sports because I had so much anger built up inside of me that was my outlet. That was how I could let go of all this anger. I wanted to be the child that had it all together, no matter what, because of how chaotic things were made because of my brother. And I grew up with a much older crowd. And so for me, when I couldn't find the love for myself, when I still felt like I couldn't reach out to people, I couldn't talk to people, nobody would understand me. I did not find myself beautiful. I started hanging out with an older crowd and started to find the effects of alcohol, and that, okay, I'm fitting in. These people seem to like me. These people seem to accept me. And it just became like this social norm, but it was not a social norm for a 14-year-old to be hanging out with a crowd of 19, 20-year-olds. And I think that at the time, my mom and stepdad did the best that they knew how to. And so on the way back from a vacation, I was taken to my dad's car lot and was told that I got to move in with him. And now take for granted I got to see my dad every other weekend, and that was on a good month, And so my dad had a lot of anger issues and a lot to work through on his own. And so me and my sister move in with him, and it just began a resentment journey for me in regards to having feelings of abandonment, feelings of not being good enough, uncared about, and unloved. But me, I did the best I could. I picked up my bootstraps and I decided, all right, we'll make the best of it, and decided to start to find a new group of friends. This is how I was actually introduced to Shelby County. And I started to feel better. I found new people that didn't know me and that were kind of like in awe with this new person coming to Shelbyville. They didn't know me. They wanted to get to know me. They thought that I was kind of cool. I'd come from Louisville. I was great at volleyball and I was excelling in school. And I wound up getting into a relationship with somebody, and it took a really hard turn and got abusive, and left me in a really, really hard place, because that relationship was what made my dad happy, and for a time it was what had made me happy, and I felt that I had finally gotten the attention and the love that I'd longed for, but then it all just ended up being a lie. And so I felt, again, useless and unloved and uncertain, and again just decided to pick up my bootstraps and move on, and got myself a condo and started to do the next thing that I just thought was okay for me. I worked at the car lot with my dad still, and was taking care of my grandfather at the time, and was able to socially drink in acceptable environments, and find friends that socially drink in acceptable environments, and thought that coming into my condo at 2 o'clock in the morning was just age appropriate and totally fine, and lived a life that I thought was normal for me at a time, but just found that I still continued to suppress everything. Like for me, oh, that happened, I'll just move on from it. I gotta still be the all well-rounded Ashley. I still gotta make my dad happy, make my parents happy, make everybody else around me happy. Because for me, for the longest time, actually truly up until about a year ago, my happiness solely was found by making others happy. If I had been so miserable and so unhappy that if I could just make one person happy and not feel the things that I felt, then that made me happy. And I would exhaust myself with it. Like, exhaust myself. And, when I was living in a condo thinking I was doing the best thing, I didn't go to college because my grandfather needed me, my dad needed me, and okay, I'll put that on the back burner for them. Volleyball wanted me, but I'd hurt my back and I couldn't play volleyball, so that dream was shattered, and I just got to keep doing for everybody else, that's fine. And when I was living in my condo, the person that had robbed me of my innocence came and robbed me of my home and beat me black and blue, and it was okay. I just had to be okay. And not long after that, I actually met my now husband, and I had come out of a bad relationship and was broken, and he had come out of a tough time, and I found happiness with him. He wasn't like anybody I'd ever met before, and for he and I, though, early on, had a really, really tough situation come upon us, and unfortunately it also involved alcohol. When I look back, some happy times happen, but a lot of not great stuff happens with alcohol involved either, and even after that, though, we said, all right, we got something going here, and I want to heal, and I want to heal with you, and I want to keep moving forward with you. And so we did. But unfortunately for him at the time, I never told him what I needed healing from, and he never understood, not until a lot of time later. And so we ended up getting our first home together and diving into remodeling homes. And for me, I thought that we were just always going to be fine, him never having to know my past. He knew the Ashley that I was then, and the Ashley that I enjoyed being, and that was okay with me until it decided not to be. We got married December 17th of 2017, and we're so happy. We wanted to have kids, and immediately started trying to have kids. And after some time of trying and not being able to, we started reaching out to different doctors because he had battled cancer before, and we were unsure if that was the reason why. This is when he started to understand some of what had happened to me as a child because of that. Is that why I couldn't have kids? And so we started trying different treatments and medications, and just when we started thinking about other options, lo and behold, on his birthday of 2019, I found out that I was pregnant. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget coming home with like this little cookie box all wrapped up, and the pregnancy test in it, and videotaping it thinking I was being all slick, but it was awesome. And I mean, it was probably the easiest, most beautiful pregnancy, except for when we had gotten our genetics testing done, just because of everything. We got a call and they were like, so it came back positive for spinal muscular atrophy, and Kyle and I at the time were like, we didn't want to find out the gender. We wanted it to be a surprise, like this was our miracle baby. And so then when we started calling like the genetics doctor and everything, we ended up finding out it was a little boy. And so that's February of 2020, Robert was born, and it was just such a blessing. It was such an easy delivery. And then, I mean, I know that COVID was really hard for a lot of people, but it was a blessing for us. We got to stay home with a new baby, and grow and love and be super happy. And at the time, you know, again, alcohol had not taken over my life. I was drinking socially acceptable times and socially acceptable amounts. And, you know, just because I had the occasional hungover or blackout, I never thought anything of it. That's what normal people do, right? But no, that's not. And so I started, as we started to get around other people more and more, I didn't realize it at the time, but fears as becoming a mother really started to just take over me. I started having fear that I wasn't going to be good enough for Robert, that I wasn't going to be good enough for the other people around me, that he was going to end up growing up and have the same feelings that I felt. And I started having thoughts of suicide that I hadn't felt in a really long time, and they just became so overwhelming as I started back to work and as I started going around even my own family members. And so what became socially acceptable drinking, I would be like, all right, well, we're about to go over to a party of people. Let me just have a couple of glasses of wine. I might have a beer or two just to shake off the nerves and calm myself down. And even then, like, we thought that was totally fine. We're going to a family function, it's a party, and you can have a couple of beers beforehand, no big deal. And it was a deal, though, because then for me, that is my pivotal point in realizing that something was wrong. But Kyle and I, at the very beginning of 2021, not at the very beginning, but about, I would say, the beginning of March, found out that I was pregnant for a second time, and it was awesome. We wanted to wait to tell people. I don't know why, I was really nervous about my second pregnancy, and then on my birthday of 2021, I was at school working, and all of a sudden I went to the restroom and was bleeding uncontrollably. And I called Kyle, and he took me down to my OB where they said that I had miscarried and that unfortunately I was going to have a D&C. And I was devastated. To back up a little bit, right before this, you know, as soon as COVID lifted and everything, Kyle and I went to go purchase a farm that was part of his family's, and again, I felt so much that I needed to please him that I decided, okay, let's do this. And on the inside, I never ever wanted to do that. And I started building walls up to Kyle because of my fears and my depression and my suicidal thoughts coming back. I felt like, oh my gosh, I have to be the perfect mom, the perfect wife, the perfect employee, the perfect person. Everybody has seen this Ashley that I've been for years. And I started to recognize the Ashley that I was as a child and in my teenage years that was just so full of fear and so full of people pleasing and so full of death and darkness and loneliness and sorrow. And so I thought making him happy would make me happy, and we moved into this home, and I didn't want to be there, and I lost a baby there, and I hated that house. People were in and out of it all the time, and after I miscarried, I drank heavily, very heavily. I didn't want to live. All I could think of was I couldn't see life. I could only see death, and it's horrible because I had the most beautiful son running around that house, and I just couldn't see anything else but what was taken from me. And I blamed myself. I blamed God more than ever, and it just was a really, really tough time. And so I started drinking really heavy because it was the only thing that made me not think. And I started getting into such a darkness. I believed people were breaking into our home. I mean, I started having fears of things that had happened to me back when I was a teenager, that thinking that they were happening to me there, because why wouldn't they happen to me there? I'm unworthy, I'm unloved, and it was misery. And in August of 2021, my husband had a seizure, and we ended up finding out that he had a brain tumor in his right front temporal lobe, and just was another reason to be sad and sick. And I was manically depressed. He became manic about thinking about dying, and he became some of my tendencies of telling everybody else he's fine, but here he and I are at home, and I'm wanting to die. He thinks that he's going to die, and I'm building resentment to him because I'm like, how dare you think you're going to die? I'm the one that's supposed to be dying here. You can't leave, you know? And Kyle's sisters, or sister-in-law and sister, actually came to me, or came to him in the end of November that year and said, hey, we think Ashley's drinking a little too much. We're not so sure we want to be around that. And for me, I thought, how dare you? You don't care about me. You never check up on me. You don't know what I'm going through. But for me, I was like, I'm going to show you, because alcohol's not the problem. All y'all are the problem. And so I quit drinking in December of 2021 on my own, and was able to stay sober, you know, without alcohol. But I was resentful, hateful, miserable. And yet, if you had seen me out in the grocery store, I would have told you how awesome I was and how great life was. And, you know, that, you know, I'm just happy. And because you would never understand. You could never understand what I was going through. And then we got really, really close with a couple that our friend had just found out that he had terminal cancer as well, and he and Kyle got very close, and I got very close with his wife. And I'd actually decided that I was going to go to somebody and talk to them, because I had started drinking again, but felt like it was socially again normal. I felt like, you know, all right, see, I can totally not drink. Obviously, I cannot drink on my own. Prove to you guys, so let me just drink socially with people. And I was able to do that until I wasn't, and I went to a very, very dear friend of mine and said, hey, I think that I have a problem. And she was like, well, come to one of these AA meetings with me. And I was like, oh, AA meeting, I am not one of them. I went to the meetings, and still I was not one of them. I mean, like, I was able to control it. I was able to stop when I wanted to. And it was everybody else causing havoc on my life, not realizing it was something within me. And so I was attending those, and still drinking on the socially acceptable times. And then at the end of March of 2022, I just couldn't help but feel, how is it that somebody so awesome could lose their life, and I still am here, and I don't want to be here? How is it that I'm here again? And so I had a gallon of alcohol and decided to go buy a second gallon of alcohol. And nobody was home. My son was being the sitter for the day, and Kyle had been out working, and I sat on my bedroom floor and finished off a half of gallon of alcohol, and decided to continue drinking the alcohol, because I just prayed, and I kept praying that I would drink until I just wouldn't wake up. I didn't want to wake up anymore. And I was too scared to get a gun. I didn't want my kid to come in and see, you know, me have a gun, and what a mess that would make. And I just thought that it would be easier that way. I was still miserable. I'd been asking Kyle for a divorce for over a year at that point. For what reason, I don't know. Been closing doors on everybody around me because they don't understand. They never will. And just self-hatred. You know, alcohol quit being a place of an escape or a place of peace or comfort. It became just gnawing. I hated it. I would look at the alcohol and it would honestly make me physically ill to want to drink it. I couldn't stand it. I didn't want to live that life anymore, but it was the only life I thought that I would ever have. And I never wanted my kid to experience anything like that. And it's so sick because I convinced myself that I loved Robert so much that alleviating myself from this world would be better for him. That in some sick way it was because I loved him so much. And so April 5th of 2022, Kyle, and I don't remember this, this is just what I know, but Kyle came home and I was unconscious on the floor and he couldn't get me to wake up. And so he called our family friend and she came, and Kyle stayed with Robert and she took me to the hospital. And when we arrived at the hospital, they had told her that I had almost 3 times the lethal limit of alcohol in my system. And they had asked her, does she know she's pregnant? And they said, we won't be able to save her. She more than likely won't be able to live. We don't think that we could, there's no way with this amount of alcohol that she's going to live. And if she lives through this amount of alcohol, there's probably no way she's going to make it through the withdrawal. I don't really know what to do. And I remember my friend telling me she went out to the car and just prayed. And I remember 2 things from my stay in the hospital. I remember screaming at a doctor with every bit of me to save the baby, and them telling me that whether I had been drinking or not, I couldn't have saved the baby because it was an ectopic pregnancy, and there was nothing that I could have done. And I remember Kyle coming to me and sitting on the edge of the bed and saying that he couldn't ever see me like that again, and that he wanted me to get help. And I remember a ton of pamphlets sitting out on the hospital bed, and I saw one that had like these swings with it and a rock fireplace, and I said, okay, I want to go there. And turns out that it was Isaiah House. And it was a faith-based place. Like, for me, I think that that's really where, when I reflect back, like, God was in this story from the very beginning. You know, from the moment I was a child, from the moment I was a teenager, from everything, He has had His hand in it. And I truly believe with my whole heart He knew that I would go through all of this to lead me up to this very moment talking to you all. And so I got to Isaiah House and I was angry at everybody. I'm like, oh my gosh. Like, I remember I'd given Kyle this whole grand plan of that. I was like, I'm going to get help. I'm fine. I'm totally fine. Like, you know, it was fluke thing that happened. I can get back home and I'll be okay. And Kyle's like, Ashley, like, what? No, this is not okay. And so I was really angry. Prior to April 5th of last year, I mean, I was so lost from God. I was looking into Hinduism and paganism and chakra, and I'm like, there's got to be some type of hope out there. Come on now, because at that point, God, I felt like, wasn't real for me. And so I was at Isaiah House, and it was now at this point right around Easter. And I was the person that I sat in the back chair. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't want to talk. I mean, I was seeing people getting all of these phone calls and things from their family. And I'm like, well, my husband's written me off, but he didn't know at the time, like, you could call and leave messages. And I'm like, y'all better call him, otherwise I'm leaving. And like, nobody has called me since I've been here. This is ridiculous. I'm here for everybody else. And so it was Easter, and this woman came around to me and said, like, all of us ladies were sitting in a group, and she was like, all right, I want everybody to take your shoes off. And for anybody that knows me, I absolutely despise feet. I think they're very gross. And she was like, and I want everybody to take their shoes off, and here's a piece of paper and a pen. You all have 3 minutes to write down every negative feeling you have felt about yourself previously or in the moment. And I started writing, and when she said time, I had written 30 things on my piece of paper, and I probably could have written a whole lot more had she given me the time. And so then they come around with a marker, and some of the girls got 7 dots on their feet, and some got over 30 dots on their feet, and they get to me, and she puts 30 dots on my feet, and she's like, all right, you guys got to walk around without your shoes on today. And I'm like, and I remember verbally being like, walk around without our, like, that's disgusting. Like, why are you having all of us walk around without our shoes on? And so I remember at the time I was smoking cigarettes, and so I went outside and I'm smoking a cigarette, and I'm like, gosh, you hate yourself. You know, you really, really hate yourself. And so they called us all back in, and we're sitting there watching the Passion of the Christ. And it gets to the part where Christ is being crucified, and just the thought overwhelmed me of, oh my gosh, you know, God would sacrifice his son to save us, and I'm just killing myself in front of mine. And after the movie, they brought around some bowls of water, and they put on the song Oceans by Hillsong. And she said, just as Christ washed the 12 disciples' feet and made them all new, knowing that some of them were even going to betray him, he made them new and clean. I want to make you all new and clean. This is your chance to start over, to start fresh, to wipe your slate clean. And I remember in my head just thinking, oh my gosh, like, God, if you're real, I'm so not worthy. I'm so far from these beautiful things. And I just so clearly remember hearing, you are beautifully and wonderfully made. And as this woman's washing my feet, I remember, I'm like, man, I don't even know where to start. Like, I'm miserable. I don't even know where to start. I have no clue. And I remember hearing, just have faith as small as a mustard seed. And when I opened up my eyes, I was on my knees and I was crying, and this woman was holding me, and I just was like, God, if you're real, like, I give it up. I don't want to live this way. I just don't want to live this way anymore. I'm miserable. Just please, please help me. And that same week, I rededicated my life by getting baptized through a church that they had there, and I felt good. I felt really, really, really good. And Kyle and my kid came to pick me up. Kyle, my son's name's Robert, came to pick me up, and I went home, and I was like, all right, you know, I'm not going to drink anymore. This is great. I mean, I was on what they call like the pink cloud. I was on cloud 9. I was all over it. This is great. But then I get home, and I'm back in my same home, and I'm back to starting to not really have processed what I had gone through in the hospital and what they had told me in the hospital. And at this point, I was 4 months sober, didn't care to have a drink. At that time, I was able to go back to school. So I had started working at elementary schools, working in a behavior unit. And for me, that was my dream. Like, ever since I was a little girl, like, I would line up all my stuffed animals and I would teach them my homework. And I remember in elementary school, I was a hall monitor, and I got to, you know, be right across from the special education classroom. So I would get them to their class and hang out with them at lunch. And I just knew in my heart of hearts that was what I was destined to do and where I was meant to be. And my principal at the time, when I had gotten out of Isaiah House and went back to her, she was so proud of me and happy. And she was like, Ashley, I would have never guessed. She was like, I never would have known. I would have never thought that. Like, I hope you know you're home here and safe here. And so I got to go see my kids off to summer and, you know, get out of school. And so then I was still on that cloud 9 over summer break. The weather's great. Life is great. And in August, I started back to school, and that's when I just started not feeling right again. You know, the sunshine slowly faded from my life, and I was starting to back to feeling miserable in my home. And, you know, I'd gotten out of treatment and I had changed. I had found all of these things, but I'm like, all right, Kyle, like, why aren't you changed? What have you been doing this month, you know? And I want to go to church and I want to do all that. And it was just, I think that for Kyle and I, we didn't even talk about what had happened in April. You know, I got home and it was just back to life, exactly the same, you know? And so I'd started back working at the school and found myself just really unhappy and starting to get very, very sad, especially because, you know, ever since my first miscarriage, this is really where I'd started to build resentment with my husband. So my first miscarriage that I'd had, I was grieving and so full of sorrow. And for my husband, we didn't understand each other at the time, because for him, he was like, oh my gosh, we're able to have another kid. Like, I want to have another kid. You know, this is great. Let's try again. And the thought just was null to me. Like, I'm like, try again. There is no again. Like, this is the end for me. And starting to really process that as we started talking about having another kid, and it just, I built back up walls to him and started talking about wanting a divorce again, and telling him how unhappy I was. And one day after work, I was like, all right, well, you were able to drink socially acceptable before. Like, you used to be able to have a drink right at 5 o'clock and be totally fine, and it would do nothing, you know? And so I decided one day after work I was going to go get a drink and hide it from everybody, and I was able to go and have one drink. It was one little airplane bottle, and I had it, and it made me feel at ease, and I went home and cooked dinner and had a great, absolutely wonderful night, and went to bed thinking, you had, like, alcohol was never the problem, you know, everybody else was the problem. You deserved a drink, you had a drink. The next day, I went to work, got home, didn't have to have a drink, and that's when I was really like, oh, see, you got control over it. You can control it. And the next day decided I would have a drink after work, and then I was like, this is kind of like a little sketchy, going to the alcohol store, like, or the liquor store, you know, and just buying a single airplane shot. So why don't you go there and just buy like a bottle? And that's when I started hiding alcohol. And then I think that the guilt and shame of the realization, oh my gosh, you don't have control. It became a necessity in my life. It became the only thing that was peace. And without alcohol, I did not have peace. I felt manic and chaotic and depressed and suicidal. And then the alcohol made me even more suicidal because of the realization that I couldn't live without it, and that I couldn't control it, and that here I was again after everything. Here I was again. And Kyle was like, listen, I'm dropping you off at your sponsor's house and you can figure it out. And I ended up deciding that I wanted to go back to treatment. And I was like, all right, you know, this is August. I'm like, I got to go back to treatment. I have to go back to treatment. I can't, like, there I'd found something that I want, that I have to get back. I need to go back to treatment. And so they took me back to treatment. And the third day into treatment, I'm calling Kyle. We weren't allowed to have phones there, and I'm sneaking to use a phone, and I'm like, listen, you got to come pick me up. This is not going to work. And he's like, you're who freaked out saying you wanted to be there. And I'm like, but this is not the place that I was at before. This is not the swings and the fire pits and the singing and the dancing, and this is not it. You got to come pick me up. This ain't going to work for me. And he was like, listen, just stick it out there. You wanted to be there, obviously, for a reason. And I'm like, they don't even have a kitchen. Like, I don't get snacks or nothing, you know, that's me. And so, then I walked through treatment the second time, like I knew all this. I got all this. Like, I knew all of this from the get-go, you know. But the major difference for me my second time in treatment was I had a therapist, and in doing therapy, I started to very vividly remember things from my childhood that I had not remembered before. And I got out of treatment the second time, and I went to Kyle, and I was like trying to unload all of this on him. And again, Kyle really had not known hardly anything from my childhood, and so I am unloading the heaviest of the heavy on Kyle. And I think for him it was just kind of like, whoa, you know, that's a lot. And again, so for me, I'm back to I want a divorce, and I just wanted to die at that point. I was back. There was no end in sight for me. Like, there absolutely was no end in sight. And I chose to drink again, and I drank with a goal, and that was to die. I couldn't sleep without seeing the images that I remembered. I could hardly even walk into a public space without fear and anxiety overwhelming me. The depression just absolutely consumed me. Everybody was against me. My own self was against me, and I just did not want to live. And Kyle took me back to my sponsors again. He was like, listen, I don't know what to do. And at my sponsors, you know, I had never, throughout the whole past year, like, had never actually accepted that, like, I was powerless. And so sitting on my couch, or sitting on her couch, you know, she was like, you've never really cared about these steps, never really done these steps, I think, before you've, like, blown smoke up me saying that you're doing them, but we're about to actually do them. And her and I sat and we prayed together, and she was like, are you ready to admit step one? And when I said that, like, I was powerless, it was just like the world stood still. And it was like God said, now you finally see. And I left her house a few days later, and then for the first time, the wheels started to actually turn for me. That, okay, it can get better. It really, really can get better. When I had gotten out of treatment the second time, I had gone to the school I was working at and told them that I really needed to work on myself, that the school had been my happy place and it no longer was happy, and that I couldn't really benefit the kids until I found my happiness again. And they were so supportive of me. Really actually amazing. But yet, see, for me, I still convinced myself, yeah, you're just telling me that, like, maybe you don't really care, you're just going to talk about me when I leave. And so this is October of last year that for the first time I actually knew I was powerless, knew I could never live a life with alcohol, that alcohol would absolutely do nothing good for me, and that I had to start figuring out me. And from the get-go, though, my sponsor kept telling me, she was like, actually, you got to get some therapy. She was like, otherwise this darkness will never lift from you. You can get sober all you want, but you will never heal. And I was like, therapist, there, you know, I don't really care about therapists. I got this, you know. And at the beginning of November of last year, I found out that I was pregnant again, and take for granted, as though I was working with my sponsor, I decided to quit working at my home. I quit working on my marriage, and unfortunately, when Kyle would try, I was done with him. And then when I would try, you know, or think I was trying, then he was done with me. And it just, you know, I blamed him for all of my unhappiness in the home that we had, and he blamed me for a lot of things. And, you know, we sought out hurting one another, and it just wasn't fun, it wasn't happy. And so for me, I dove everything I had into AA, and I was starting to go to meeting after meeting after meeting and focusing on me. And, you know, I think that a lot of resentment built up between one another, and I found out that I was pregnant, and in my mind, I'm like, oh, you know, I guess this will fix us. This will fix us. Mm-hmm. December 10th, my dad had a heart surgery. And December 9th, I woke up and was bleeding. And my mind just immediately went to, you've lost the baby again. And it was truly like a tidal wave on my body, on my mind, on my spirit. I thought that would be the only way that I could fix my marriage, fix my life, find happiness. And so I went to my dad's surgery the next day, and I was with my sister, and we went out to get lunch, and I told her, I said, I need a drink. And I took a sip of the drink, and I didn't even finish the drink. It tasted like bile going down my throat. And I was in the bathroom at the hospital, and I was still bleeding. And at the time, I had left my job, so I didn't have health insurance any longer. And even though I didn't fully know, I knew that I was unworthy, and that I lost another child, and that no matter how much I could convince myself I was happy, I wasn't happy, and I just quit caring. I didn't care to hide a bottle of alcohol. I didn't care to hide that I was trying to kill myself. I didn't care to hide that I was done. And I went home and I just drank. With every drink, I prayed it would be my last. And my husband was like, I'm not doing this. You're not doing this to me again. You're not doing this to Robert again. You're not. So you go ahead and do it. And he filed for emergency custody of our son Robert, and he left the house on December 17th of 2022. And he said, you've always wanted this divorce. You're getting a divorce. Don't worry. And then for me, I'm like, hold on. I've wanted the divorce. You don't get to give me the divorce. I'm giving you the divorce. And he's like, I don't care. We're getting a divorce. I'm done. Go ahead. Do this to yourself. I'm done. And December 17th of last year, I woke up to footsteps in our home, and I remember waking up and being like, get out of this house. And I opened up my eyes, and it was a cop, and he was like, unfortunately, it's you that has to get out of the house. And my dad showed up later, and my dad was like, pack your stuff, come on. You constantly talk about you don't ever want to come back here. Don't worry, you will never come back here again then. And I get over to my dad's house, and he's like, do you understand what's going on? And I was like, I don't care. I don't care at all. And my dad ended up staying up all night and talking with me. And devising this whole grand plan of we're going to get this divorce attorney, and we're going to get this attorney, and we're going to do this, and we planned this whole great plot about how I'm going to be so vindictive to Kyle, and I'm going to be vindictive to everybody else around me and point out everything that everybody else does wrong. And I remember watching the sun come up because we had truly stayed up all night long. And I just said, I looked at my dad and I said, I don't want to fight anymore. And I wrote Kyle, and I said, listen, I'll sign over temporary custody of Robert to you. Let's just get this divorce. So be it. I need to get long-term treatment. I got to get some help. Because for me, I'm like, you're alive. And I just don't want to live this way anymore. And so I told my dad, I said, listen, I'm going to go back to treatment. And he was like, all right, so we'll pick you up in a month. And I was like, no, I don't think a month's going to cut it. And he was like, so what, 2 months? And I was like, I really don't think that's going to cut it. I was like, and during my times in treatment before, I kept hearing it takes 90 days to create a new habit and 90 days to break an old habit. And I was like, I think that I need just like some really deep therapy, Dad. And he was like, so what are you talking? I was like, I don't want to be in treatment any less than 90 days. And I wish that my grandmother was here. I mean, she was like, what? Have you lost your mind, Ashley? And I was like, clearly I have, because there's no doubt about it. And I wrote Kyle saying I was going to get stuff out of the house to just please let Robert know that I love him. And I'd called around to a place. I was like, listen, maybe Isaiah House probably wasn't my best bet. I'm going to go to try ARC, because I saw it was also a faith-based facility. And so my dad takes me, and we meet this van of people, and it's all guys. And you should have seen my dad. He was like, whoa, you better call me if you need me. Keep your phone on you. And he was like, well, we got to take her phone. And my dad is like, you are absolutely not taking her phone. She is a female getting in it. It was just... So that was that. And I got to the treatment place, and at this time, you know, I was still spot bleeding a little bit, and I got there and got all checked in, and I was like, all right, you know, I again pulled myself up from my bootstraps, and I was ready to go. And I decided at that time, I was like, I'm going to start writing Robert, and I want Robert to get a letter every single day. You know, I don't know when I'm going to be able to talk to him, but I want to write Robert every day. And so I was writing Robert. And I was at this facility for a day and a half, and the second day that I was there, I'd started to bleed so heavily and have such severe stomach cramps that I started freaking out, thinking I'd ruptured a tube. And I go to the nurse, and I'm like, listen, I can hardly stand up. I'm in so much pain. I don't know what to do. And so they take me to UK Hospital, and I'm at UK Hospital, and I tell them everything that was going on. And they're like, well, let's go get an ultrasound just to make sure. It sounds like your tube has ruptured, and we might have to end up removing your tube. And so they take me up, and they do the ultrasound. The lady doing the ultrasound doesn't say a word to me. And I remember sitting there, and I had a Bible with me. And I just remember, and I was praying, and I was like, God, just give me some type of sign. Like, give me some type of sign that I'm doing the absolute right thing. And I wish that I'd pulled it up on my phone, but I opened up my Bible, and it opened up to Psalm 77. And I read verses 1 through 7, and it basically talked about cry out to me and help, and how can you not remember all of the wonders and miracles that I've done previously? You call out to me and help, and I hear you, you know, never forget the wonders of what I've done. And I'm like, all right, I trust you. I trust you. You know, it was never you that left me. I'd always turned my back on you. So, you know, I'm sorry. I always come to you at the worst of the worst and ask you to pull through for me. Just pull through for me. And I was terrified of going into surgery, and the doctor came up to me, and he was like, listen, I'm really not supposed to ever do this. He was like, but, you know, I got some good news and some bad news for you. He was like, bad news, you've got a subchorionic hematoma. It's causing you major bleeding. Unfortunately, there's nothing we can do about it. You keep bleeding like this, or you bleed and it lasts longer than a few hours. We need you to come back to the hospital. And then he turned his phone around, and there's this little baby dancing on an ultrasound. And he said, but I can say this, you still got a baby. The heartbeat sounds awesome. He was like, it's too soon to tell anything. He was like, but you got a baby? And at that point, I just was like, God, I don't care. I don't care anymore. Just whatever you want from me, I'll do. You tell me. You tell me. And the woman that I was with she heard me praying, and she said, you want him to tell you, you hold on to that Bible. She said, every answer, everything you have a question to, every answer will come straight from that. And so I got back to the facility I was at the time, and they were like, well, you're pregnant, you can't be here, so we have to transfer you. So they transferred me to a place called Karen's Place Maternity Center, and I get there, And it's all these women with different babies or far along in pregnancy, and you know, I get there and I'm a nervous wreck, and I get put in a room with people, and it was a very, very tough time for me. I was all the way in Ashland, and I've never been bullied in my life, and I was bullied at this facility. They would convince people that I was stealing from them, and you know, no matter how I was in my madness, I'd never stolen from people. If I was sitting at a table, they wouldn't never let anybody sit with me. I loved oatmeal, and they would spit in my oatmeal, and they were just really hateful. And at this time, I'd gotten to Karen's place, and it was Christmas Eve, and I called Kyle, and at this point he and I had not talked since the 17th, and he answered the phone, and I said, listen, it's me, I just want to talk to Robert, I just want to tell him Merry Christmas. And he let me talk to Robert, and I told him kind of what was going on, and I told him that the baby was okay, and that's why I got transferred, and that was that. That was our first phone conversation. And then I wouldn't been able to have another phone call for a week or so. And I ended up being able to convince the lady to let me call on Christmas Day. And so then I called back in, and Kyle's like, well, have you gotten all the papers yet? And I'm like, what papers? And he was like, well, I did. I filed for divorce, Ashley, and I filed for custody of Robert. Have you gotten that? And I'm like, man, it's Christmas. Like, how are you about to be dropping this ball on me now? And so then I just was like, all right, okay. And it was probably one of the lowest points in my adulthood in sobriety. To be trying and fighting so hard, knowing how much I'd hurt somebody that really did mean a lot to me. What Robert was probably going through on Christmas. And then to be treated so poorly by people that are supposed to be getting recovery. And it was just tough. It was really tough. And so I was at Karen's place for about 3 weeks, and I started calling Kyle and was like, I can't be here anymore. And I don't know what to do. I don't know who to call. At that point, I ended up calling my mom, and I'm like, listen, would you come pick me up? They won't let me leave. I just can't be here. It got to a point where people that had very personal sicknesses going on, that they were then intentionally trying to give me stuff, accusing me of doing things that just were unthinkable, all because of 2 girls that didn't like me when I'd first gotten there. And so I just broke down, and I was crying, and I was praying, and I didn't know what to do, and I kept holding on to God so tight, and I'm like, God, I know you got me here. I know you got me here, so tell me where to go now. And I ended up getting a hold of Isaiah House, and I was like, listen, I don't know where to go. I don't want to come back to you guys because you don't have a long enough program. And they were like, well, no, we actually have this new program now. It's 30 days in one section, 30 days in another, then 30 days, and then you can transition on from that. And I was like, okay. And ARC then put up a fight. It took me over 3 days to be able to get them to send my release over to Isaiah House to be able to leave. And when Isaiah House came to pick me up, I will absolutely never forget it. I mean, it was a 3-hour ride there, but I mean, the woman just prayed with me, and we worshiped together, and we sang music, and we talked, and she cared about me so much, and I just felt so loved. And when I got back to Isaiah House this time, I just felt home, and everybody welcomed me with just the biggest of arms and telling me how proud they were of me. And I'd finally gotten to a point in life where I was like, listen, God, like if my marriage isn't supposed to work, I give it to you. That's fine. Like, if I'm not supposed to be in Robert's life, that's fine. I give it to you. If I Like, I don't care if I lose absolutely everything. Just please keep this baby safe. Just please keep me safe. And I just believe in you. Like, I want every bit of you. And if that means that I had to lose absolutely everything for me to see you and go down your way, then I will. And I did. And I mean, it just, I started getting to talk to Kyle and Robert more, and I was getting therapy at ARC. That was probably the best thing. I was getting therapy 3 times a week. At Isaiah House, I was getting therapy twice a week, and I mean, the therapy was helping me. I was finally accepting that, like, I had no control over what happened to me as a child, none. But I do have control over my actions and what I choose now, and that I had to just accept it. And that was really, really hard for me, that I just had to accept it. But accepting it allowed me to start to heal from it. And as I dug more into God's Word, I'll never forget, I got to Isaiah House and I'd started bleeding really, really heavy again. And there my mind went spiraling down that here I am, I'm losing the baby, I'm losing the baby. I was never meant to have this baby. I'm losing the baby. And I got to the hospital and they couldn't find a heartbeat. And the woman that I was with, I mean, she was like, just hold on. And they ended up finding the heartbeat. He was rolled into a really weird position. And I remember there's where I found out that I was having another boy, and I remember talking with Kyle a little bit more and apologizing, and still to that day I was writing Robert a letter every single day. I was writing Robert a letter every day, and I remember at this point, though, I'd started to ask Kyle, because in therapy they were asking me, like, do you really want to get a divorce? And I was like, I don't really know. I don't know. And I remember I'd started asking Kyle, I was like, for a long time we had talked about putting God at the center of our marriage and never really did. Do you think things would be different if we had? And Kyle was like, probably, yeah. And I was like, you would try and I wouldn't try, and then I would try and then you wouldn't try, and do you think things would be different if we both tried at the same time? And he was like, yeah, probably. He was like, but I don't know that I'm ready to try. And I was like, well, I don't know that I'm ready to try, but this is kind of what I'm working through right now in therapy, and I just wanted to know. And my biggest thing is I was like, please, if I don't really care about what else you do, but just let me come and box my stuff up. I'm a control freak, OCD, think that, I can control everything, Ashley. And I'm like, just don't touch my stuff. Don't touch my stuff. And I'll come box it up when everything's done. And he's like, I'm not touching your stuff, Ashley. And so I graduated from one part of the program and went on to the second part and graduated from the next part of the program. And every single time there was a woman that was always there. I know she won't care if I say her name, Abby. And Abby, every single time, would be like, Ashley, you never listened to me before. Are you ready to keep going? And I'm like, yeah, keep going. Come on, let's keep going. And so then I graduated their very last part of the program. And at this point, Kyle and I had finally started talking about me being able to see Robert. And it was a pivotal moment when the day before Robert's 3rd birthday, we had worked it out with court and everything for me to be able to see Robert. And Kyle drove out. And he and I just both visibly fell apart in front of each other. I had never seen this side of Kyle, and I don't think Kyle had ever seen the peace within me. And I think that it just was groundbreaking for us both, because I had always felt Kyle didn't really care about me, but he was emotional, and I don't think that Kyle for a very long time had seen even a glimpse of the woman he had fallen in love with. And he had seen the peace within me. And before Kyle left that day, couldn't tell you how, I couldn't tell you really because for the longest time of that visit, Kyle and I did not even speak with one another. I just held Robert and loved Robert and sang to Robert and got to give Robert gifts and celebrate his birthday. And as they were going to leave, Kyle and I looked at each other and we were like, are we doing this? And we said, yeah, we're doing this. And so I graduated from the very last part of their program, and at that point I had made it my 90 days. I was so excited, and they came to me and they were like, all right, Ashley, what are you doing? Where are you going? And I was like, I don't think I'm ready to go home. I don't think Kyle's ready for me to go home. I'm not ready to really go anywhere else. Is there anything you can offer me? And they were like, well, we got this thing called sober living. And I'm like, well, sign me up. And so I was in sober living, and that's when I finally started to get to come home more, and I would go and see Robert as much as possible. And I think that it was just a very beautiful time in life. Kyle and I started to go to church together on Sundays, and I was still doing therapy twice a week, and I just really realized more than ever I had to focus on me, and I had to for once love me. And for the first time in nearly 30 years, I loved me. And I could look in a mirror and I actually felt pretty, not because back in my younger years, I thought that bikini modeling was what would make me beautiful and what would make other people give me that validation I so longfully sought. And I felt so beautiful. I could not wear makeup, and I felt happy, and anger just didn't seep through me, and things would happen that would be out of my control that was just okay. I know that Kyle's family had reservations, my family had reservations, and I found myself, for people that had hurt me, praying for them versus seeking harm to them, or not like harm, but like you think you're so much better than me, you got this, and wanting to point out everybody else's flaws. Like, I would genuinely pray for them, and I would want good for other people, and I wouldn't judge other people, and I wanted to mend and restore, and I wanted to bring hope and life, and I didn't want to make other people happy. I wanted myself to be happy so that I could help other people, that I could wholly help others. And I started working for Isaiah House and met the absolute best friend I could ever imagined, and just God kept opening door after door after door after door, but it still was so hard. I would have really, really tough days leaving Robert to go back to sober living, and a baby crying, and I still had my subchorionic hematoma, and living every single day in so much fear that I still was so unworthy of this baby. And what's the catch? What's the catch? What's the catch of this pregnancy? Because I shouldn't be here. This baby shouldn't be here. What's going to happen? And, still thinking the shoe's going to drop in my marriage. Like, all right, Kyle, are you reeling me back in just to let me off the line again? And it wasn't. And Kyle and I ended up seeking out marriage counseling and getting involved in church and talking with one another, and finally just loving one so unconditionally. And I found that my relationship that had been so broken with someone so specific in his family just restored, and you all opened me back with the most loving of arms. And I went back to the school, and I knew that the school, Shelby County is a pretty small town, and people were coming up to me and talking about, this and that they had heard, and stepping back out into public, absolutely mortified, having anxiety attacks that felt like my chest was caving in at my son's t-ball games, but still being there and still standing strong and not needing a drink and knowing that it was still going to be okay. And I went back to the school and I went for an interview, And I'm like, all right, God, I literally want nothing in my life that if it's not for you, for your glory, and for your will, like I want no part in it. And I even prayed that prayer over and over and over about my marriage, and got to a point where I was like, Kyle, either we're 100% in and we're 100% out, you know. And man, we went 100% in, and I went 100% into every single thing in my life for the first time. And I went 100% in on everything that mattered to me, not what mattered to everybody else, not what mattered to make myself look better for once. Like, I just wanted genuinity and love and life. And, you know, I had to forgive. And a big thing that I learned was, guess what, especially with my marriage, like, the past was the past. From this moment forward, nothing of that matters. Nothing. You cannot reflect on any of that. And I had to take that same realization for my life, that, all right, from this moment forward, everything previously, that does not matter. It is what I choose today. And I would have some really, really hard days, and some days where it would tell me, man, you just deserve a break. It might not be alcohol, but you need a break. Go pick back up that cigarette. You need a break. And it's, you know, but I just kept choosing God. And now I'm actually at a point in my life where, like, I dig into the Bible. I'm no longer thirsty for a drink. I'm hungry for His Word. And I just get to a point where if I feel off kilter for my day, I check, have you been praying enough? Nope. Have you taken enough time? Like, have you spoken about what's going on? And it's just communication, and it's love. It is so much genuine love. Just really genuine love. And it all had to start with just loving me. Just loving me enough. And now it's not, I know I can't drink, but I choose not to drink because, you know, I've had people ask me before, like, oh, you think you really could never have a drink again? Like, you don't think, like, for even a celebration? And my biggest thing is, like, I've had some of the greatest times without a drink. And I've been in social situations where other people are drinking and have had probably more fun than they're having, that I just could never even think of a moment that is worthy enough of having a drink, you know. And I know that for me, I just want to strive every day in my life to be as Christ-like as possible. I will never, ever be perfect, but I want to love others and care for others and find redemption and restoration and healing and hope for everybody possible, because I never thought it would be possible for me. And here I am. I should be dead. I genuinely should be dead. And I am here. And I'm broken. But man, God has just beautifully put me back together to where I've never felt more whole. And I am just so full of hope. And for the first time, I know true joy and happiness. And I just want nothing more than for everybody else to feel that. I catch myself constantly throughout a day asking God for His forgiveness, because now I actually just see my faults. I don't necessarily see all of the faults of everybody else. I just see my faults, and it's weird and it's different. But yeah, thanks.
Hey, just give me 1 minute. Let's have a seat just 1 minute. Because I know Ashley and I had talked about this before. More than anything else, we want people to be in a good spot. with Jesus Christ, because she talked about that thing. You can get sober, and you can get sober, and you get sober, and you can get sober, and several of us have done that over the years. And a lot of things can help get you sober, but the difference between sobriety and recovery is a guy named Jesus.
Amen.
And that's the difference. And so I know Ashley would love to talk to you. I'm going to hang around for as long as necessary. But like, if there's anybody who wants to talk about getting it right with Jesus tonight, that's more what we like to talk about than anything else. To the point that if you say, hey, can I get baptized tonight? Absolutely, 100%. That can happen. Absolutely. It stays full, and 95% of the time it stays warm. I can't guarantee which percentage we're on right now. So just thank you. And I wanted everybody to hear the whole story, because if it wasn't, I think it was obvious too, that was just real and raw and from a long time. And so let me pray. And if somebody here needs to talk to somebody, by the way, this is Dennis Hampton. For those of you who know, Dennis is kind of lead CR, and he's one of our elders here too at the church, along with me and some other guys. So there are people here that if you need to talk to somebody, we'd love to talk with you. All right, let me pray.
We got clothes too. If anybody wants to get wet, don't worry about it.
Oh yeah.
Clothes.
Yeah, you don't have to go home in your wet clothes. We got dry stuff over there. God, thank you. Thank you for being a God that heals, and a God that restores, and a God that continually gives life. I thank you for this particular story that we've walked through tonight. I thank you that you chose to let me be part of this story for the last year, and I can't wait to see the chapters that are still to come. And so God, we just give you that, but we also know that there's a bunch of other stories in this room. Some of them that are just now starting to get written. And so we just want to see a library full of changed lives. That's what these stories are about. Thank you, God, for loving us enough to give us Jesus. In his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right.